If you watch this episode of Seismic Cinema, you will die in 7 days. But don't let that put you off. Welcome, James. How are we doing?
I'm good, mate. How's yourself?
Well, I'm a bit worried. I've just watched this VHS tape I found in my new house, and I got this weird phone call after, but I'm sure it's nothing.
What did the phone call say?
Just said 7 days. I don't know if it was the name of the local kind of open all hours store, but we'll see.
See, the funny thing is, I get the same phone call. It said 7 days, but it turns out it was just Craig David. It was at the end of it.
Oh, is that the Craig David reference? Okay. I should have worked that one out. Anyway, I'm Colin. I've probably not seen it. Paul, our editor, he mentioned he watched a videotape 7 days ago and couldn't make it today, but again, it's probably nothing. And James?
I'm James, and I've probably written an essay on it. See, the last time I seen Paul, actually, he had blood coming from his nose, so I hope he's all right.
Yeah, our thoughts are with Paul anyway, so... Okay, so you probably guessed from the horrendous patter on the way in and some of the visuals that we're going to be reviewing The Ring, which came out in 2002. So just before we get into that, you can find Seismic Cinema on X, Instagram, Threads, TikTok, Blue Sky, of which I'm a complete expert, and also on Facebook and our Facebook page and our community groups. So please consider sharing or joining. You can also watch us on YouTube and Spotify and listen to us additionally on Apple Podcasts, Audible, and Amazon Music, and probably some other platforms that we've forgotten about. We're also part of the Podpack Collective, which features a host of fantastic podcasts. So please search up the Podpack Collective on social media, give these guys a follow and a listen.
Welcome to my friendly game club, where everyone is welcome. The podcast where we share, we play, we run and sing. Well, we don't run, but we do sing.
Hey kids, are you looking for a new favourite fortnightly video game review podcast?
Then boy howdy have we got the show for you.
We take a different game every 2 weeks and we review them just like a book club.
You can find us on all good podcasting platforms.
And some of the sketchy ones too.
Simply search for the Game Club podcast and join the club today.
Okay, so some of our recent episodes, just in case you're enjoy this and you want to check out more, was The Matrix, which did really well by all accounts. We also recently reviewed American Psycho and Toy Story 1. So James, just before we get into the podcast, I'm just wondering, you've finished your Bigfoot exhibition. You're nearing the end of your Dexter journey. Have you been checking out anything interesting this week?
No, is the short answer to that. I think I said last week that I managed to finish Dexter New Blood. So enjoyed that. Bigfoot is finished. Hopefully a new season will come out, in the new year. But I've not watched anything new. I've been that busy. And working things and we're doing all that sort of stuff. I've not really had time to watch anything other than the film that we are doing today. So nothing new, I'm afraid.
Is it eat, sleep, teach, repeat?
Exactly that, mate. Sometimes you forget to eat.
Yeah. Anyway, so I finished Only Murders in the Building season 4. The last episode came out this week. Wasn't my favorite season, but I still enjoy the characters, so I kind of stuck it out to the end. Obviously, I watched The Ring for this podcast. I also watched the second or the sequel to this one as well. I started watching, the kind of 2 episodes series in the early 90s, the It ones with Tim Curry.
Yes.
I started watching the first one of that, so I'll probably go back to that because I remembered really enjoying that when I watched it years ago. And one of my favourite kind of this time of the year films, I watched Coco, the Pixar movie, which is just a delightful film. So I quite enjoyed that. So watched a couple of things this week. With I really want to see Smile 2, but I don't know if I'm going to make it to the cinema in the near future.
I didn't realise that was a thing
Mhm.
until I went through Twitter and I seen that
Yeah.
everybody posting about it. So I
Mhm.
don't think you've seen Smile 1 yet, or just
Oh,
Smile.
you should definitely check it out. It scarred me for life. And there's another one coming out. It's like a legal one. Is it The Juror?
Nah, I don't
Which
know.
looks quite good.
You quite fancy that. You like your legal stuff.
Yeah, but I'm struggling to get to the cinema at the moment, so I might just have to wait until these things come out on streaming, but I'm sure I'll catch them one way or another. Right, so just before we get into the review, just a wee bit of background on The Ring. It came in at 1 hour and 55 minutes. It's a horror and mystery film. The premise is after a series of mysterious deaths, an investigative journalist must find the cause behind them before the same fate comes knocking on her door. It was directed by Gore Verbinski, who I just found out today was also the director of the first Pirates of the Caribbean film, which is quite interesting. The writer is it Erin Kruger. There's some of the scores on IMDb. It's got 7.1, 57 with the critics out of 100, and 71% on Rotten Tomatoes. So it's pretty similar on the different platforms. The budget was 48 million, and the box office was 249 million. It doesn't have any Oscars, but it's won 14 awards and had a further 12 nominations. The cast
Did you
list
say?
involves Naomi.
Sorry,
Sorry.
sorry, Colin, to interrupt. Did you say that
Yeah.
the writer was Erin Kruger?
It's like EHREN. Either that, I'm struggling to read my own writing.
Well, either that. It's a sibling anyway of Freddie, obviously.
You stopped my flow just for that.
Sorry.
It's all right. I probably stopped you for worse. So, anyway, cast list: Naomi Watts as Rachel Keller, which does sound a bit like Rachel Geller, which would have been Rachel at her friend's name if she'd married Ross. I'm sure that's a coincidence. Martin Henderson as Noah Clay, David Dorfirm, again, can't read my writing, as Aidan Keller, Davlee Chase as Samara Morgan, Brian Cox as Richard Morgan, and Shannon Cochran as Anna Morgan. So the Morganses are well represented. I was looking at some of the IMDb trivia, and it was a conscious decision not to have too many kind of big hitter or well-known actors at the time in this one because they wanted the film to kind of stand out on its own merits. So it's not as maybe extensive like I've obviously heard of Naomi Watts, but I hadn't heard of any of the other actors really before this.
Well, that's it. I've when I was kind of watching this, only kind of seen Naomi Watts. That was the only person I kind of recognised. There's a few people that I recognise as I go through the film, but there's not really any big names in there. So that's quite good that they did it that way, you know, because sometimes the name overshadows the actual film. So it was decent.
Yeah. And just before we get in, we've got a couple of comments on X. So Stu World Order, great supporter of the channel, and did a recent collaboration with our very own Paul, said, "The last movie that truly and deeply scared me. I was bothered by this for days in its wake," which is interesting because we know Stu likes his horror films, so that's quite high praise.
Aye, I mean, I think this film can go, you know, one or two ways. The way that, you know, it bothers Stu, and then people just might know, you know, I don't know, maybe not exceeded their expectations, you know what I mean? So, I guess we'll get into the review shortly, but...
Yep. And We Needed Roads podcast said, being a big fan of the original, I was pleasantly, just like there's a word, pleasantly surprised by the US remake. So yeah, obviously this film was a remake of a Japanese horror film, which on reflection, I'm quite keen to watch myself to see how the films differ. Have you seen the... Actually, we'll get to that when we talk about our history. We Needed Road podcast also added, I watched the original years back when I was sick in bed with the flu. Absolutely terrifying experience. It's quite an interesting choice of movie when you've got the flu. And finally, the podcast that wouldn't die. Well, I wonder if that's still the case if they watched the videotape. I always found it creepy and surprising. I need to see the original Japanese version. So maybe this could be a two-parter. Maybe we go and fish out the Japanese version and review that in the future.
I'd be up for that.
Yeah. So yeah, that was a comment. So James, I can ask the question and stopped halfway through. So, what's your history of The Ring?
Well, I've never seen the original. It's a wee bit surprising because I do like watching like Japanese films and Korean films, what have you. Do you know what I mean? So I've just never seen the original. Although I do like your idea of going back and watching it and maybe comparing them both. So I will watch that. In terms of this film, though, the 2002 remake, I seen it when it came out. Not in the cinema though. It was. I got shall we say, a copy of it.
You got a VHS tape.
I got. I don't think it was a VHS tape. I think 2002 was maybe the near the start of the DVD era. But it was a local vendor, shall we say. They passed on the copy. And I remember watching it in my pal's house. It was like a weekend, and that was the only time I had watched it until this podcast, actually. So I only had ever seen it once. I remember, like, as you should be watching horror films with the lights off and all the rest of it. Do you know what I mean? It does. There's aspects of this film that will always be memorable for certain aspects of it, which we'll come on to. But I only seen the film once, never seen the original, and seen the film for the second time just the other day there.
Cool. Well, it won't come to any great surprise to our subscribers that I hadn't seen it, and I picked it because it was one that, again, it's one of those horror films you've always heard of, even if I hadn't seen it. It's on Now TV, so I kind of came across it when I was browsing, and it's one that's referenced in a lot of kind of popular culture. Like, if I was to guess, I'm sure the Simpsons have riffed it at some point, and I'm sure it's came up in loads of other films as well. So if anyone knows of any particular references to The Ring in other movies and shows, then feel free to drop it in the comments or tag us on social media. So yeah, everyone knows. Those who have listened to this channel long enough knows I'm on my kind of journey to enlightenment in terms of all the movies you should have seen. So this was another notch on the belt.
I'm proud of you, mate.
Yeah,
I'm proud of you.
It's very cathartic. Right, so getting into the review itself, I was originally going to go just kind of key scenes, but I actually thought it'd be quite interesting with the nature of the podcast that we maybe just go day by day, and then once we reach the end of the podcast, we see if we actually survived or not.
Okay. You can do it day by day if you want, see what I can remember, what happened on which day.
I may or may not have a brief summary in front of me.
You can't have to prompt me then.
What's that?
My notes are not day by day, scene by scene,
okay.
so
I'm sure work it. So obviously the film starts, and right away they capture the kind of atmosphere, don't they, with the kind of green tinge that's present throughout the film, which, again, upon reading about it, was another intentional thing. They did it to kind of make you feel a bit sick and a wee bit kind of out of sorts kind of going into the film. And there's the opening scene with the two girls talking about the videotape and kind of winding each other up. I wondered, see, when I always forget what's the name of the cousin again?
Was it Katie?
That sounds right. So Katie's talking about, she's saying, "Oh, I watched." She's like, it seems like she's winding her pal up, and she's talking about that she watched this tape that if you die in 7 days after watching it, and then she starts to choke. And I wondered, I don't know if you can remember the first time you watched it, but did you fall for that? Did you think that she was actually about to die in that moment?
I don't remember, mate, if I'm honest with you. I think, looking at this time around, you kind of get I don't know, it's almost like a general kind of, teen movie bit there, isn't it? They're playing, games and each other and things. I think at the time, I probably did. Do you know what I mean? Because
I fell for it.
Aye, you walk into this film, or you sit there watching this film, whatever. You know it's a kind of horror film. You know, and what else are you going to be expecting? And that happens, you go, "Up, she's for it." But there's obviously a wee bit of a red herring there. Do you know what I mean? Until what's to come later on. But aye, a wee bit of banter back and forth between the both of them.
Yeah, and it's so I'm trying to. I don't think they actually confirm this. Well, I suppose they kind of do. So Katie's joking about the fact that she's seen it, but obviously she dies, I assume, the next day or that night. So I'm assuming when she was joking about watching the film that she had watched it 7 days ago and that it was like a double bluff, essentially. They don't really confirm that. It doesn't really specify maybe the time difference between her death and the opening scene, but that was what I took from it.
I mean, I thought it happened at their end. I need to go back and look at that because you get when you just think it's in the same place, or maybe it wasn't. Because you remember kind of seeing like she's like looking at the reflections or something moving in the background and all that sort of thing. Do you know what I mean? The fridge door opens and it builds tension. So I wasn't. I'm not sure actually if that happened in the same night, whatever. But obviously she had watched it, but didn't believe. You know what I mean? Didn't believe that the fact that this was going to happen, which makes you wonder because throughout the film you get kind of, you get Rachel. Sorry, I did my Batman reference in there. You get Rachel's kind of paranoia through it, and things happen. So you wonder if if that happened to Katie as well. But even then, at that point in time, she didn't believe it.
Yeah, you assume it. She must have went through similar things,
Aye.
So then you don't find out directly she dies, but you see Rachel's son, whose name is it? Oh, I've got it in front of me. Aiden. Yeah. So Aiden's at school, and his mum's late for picking him up. So you immediately get a kind of vibe that their relationship's maybe not great, and that's obviously a kind of theme throughout the film. Like, I kept wondering why he kept calling his mum Rachel instead of mum, and I was talking to Aileen, I was like, would that not really annoy you if your kid refused to call you mum and just called you by your first name all the time? But what was your take on why he called her Rachel rather than mum?
I don't know. I found it odd. I mean, I've got a mate who does exactly the same thing. I don't get it.
I maybe jokingly call my dad by his first name and my mum now and again. Not in a serious way. Do you know what I mean? Like, if it's a birthday card, it's mum and dad. If I'm, do you know what I mean?
No, I've never I never once called my dad his name or whatever. Even to my mum to this day, I never say our name. Do you know what I mean? So I don't know. It's just maybe the way you brought up. I even call it my uncles, like Uncle James, Uncle Peter, and all that sort of stuff. I never called them just James or Peter.
I feel weird calling, even at the age I'm at now, I feel weird calling aunts and uncles by their first name. So yeah, it's always aunt and
maybe
uncle.
a generational thing.
It came through more seeing the sequel to this. It's actually quite a big plot point about. I wouldn't go into details in case I don't think you have. Have you seen it, the sequel?
No, I've not seen Ring 2, no.
So it's quite important in that. But what you probably take from it is like he seems quite detached from reality, Aiden, like throughout the film. Whether that's because of the videotape or just that's what he was like beforehand, but he doesn't really seem like he's always kind of in the room. And maybe he just has that kind of sense of detachment from his mum.
Aye. But even like when one goes to the school and like she speaks to his teacher and things like that, and she asked her, how is he, took the death, his cousin and all that sort of thing, and she says he's not much a talkative person, but you can see his drawings, and then it turns out that the drawings happened a week before Katie died and things, so I don't know if maybe he's got some sort of, he has got some sort of ability, I would say. But then his form of communication is, through imagery and pictures and things, so As we're taught in school, all behaviour is communication. So,
Is this another school movie?
Sorry?
Is this yet another school movie?
No, it's quite not as much as the previous ones, but I just thought I'd throw it in there. So he drew the pictures a week before Katie's passing.
Which makes you think that was Katie keeping him in the loop of what was going on? So he was maybe drawing these pictures over the 7 days to show all the different things she was going through.
It's a good point. You don't ever find that out, do you? Though you don't ever find out how close they were.
No, it seemed like they were quite close because he was quite upset by her, or he was really upset by her death, but also the individual parents kind of allude to the fact they were close, like the kind of funeral scene and things like that.
True. That's true.
So then, obviously, they have the funeral for Katie, and Rachel is there, kind of comforting her sister and her kind of brother-in-law, who seems to be taking the loss naturally really badly. And there's a scene in here before we get into like the kind of 7 days of it. There was a scene in here where the mum's basically saying that she saw Katie's face, and then it's just a quick pan to her with like the ring face. I don't know the best way to describe it, and then it just kind of like quickly zooms back to the mum. What did you make of that wee transition?
I like it because I know you like it. It's like a face. It's kind of, I don't know, frozen. I don't even know how to describe it.
Shocked,
froze. Yes, I would say that. I mean, I like it because you would really need to pause the DVD or the stream, wherever you watched it, to actually see what it looks like. There's a transition later on in the film that's exactly the same thing, but I mean, because of the quick nature of it, you're like, that's pretty scary. That's like what happened to them? Do you know what I mean? So I quite enjoyed. Well, I say enjoyed, but I liked the way that they actually portrayed that, because it wasn't like here's a 10-second clip of what happened to her. It was. It makes you think as well. I mean, what was that? And I quite liked that. I don't know what you thought.
It's the film definitely captured, like, the film kind of hooked me from probably the first scene, to be honest, and you're just constantly wanting to find more, aren't you, and kind of unravel the mysteries. So just after that conversation, Rachel goes outside and she's talking to a couple of Katie's friends, and the girl that was with Katie the night that she died is now in a mental institution, and then obviously we see her later in the film as well. But the conversation, there's a boy there, and he's talking about, he says to Rachel, "Oh, she watched this videotape that makes you die in 7 days," so that's where she gets that information. And also it's revealed that Katie had a boyfriend that was a bit of a secret, and they went away to the Shelter Mountain Inn for a kind of weekend or whatever, and that's where they watched the tape. But it's quite interesting that the boyfriend also died, and it was from, there's a close up of a newspaper headline that he jumped off a balcony or something like that.
Suicide. That was it.
And it turns out that they've both got the same time of death, which is a recurring thing, that it's always kind of 10 o'clock. What I've thought about there because I rewatched some of this like last night and this morning. It's interesting that his death was from jumping to death, which obviously mirrors part of the video where Anna Morgan jumps off the cliff.
Aye.
So I wonder if the video got him or impacted him in a different way and made him kind of copy that action.
Aye. Before I go into that, just see the boy that tells him about the video, and he's in. I don't know if you've ever seen the TV show, The OC.
No, I haven't. No. I've heard of it.
Nah. Well, he's that's Seth from the OC. Aye, so I was like, I know him at least,
Yeah.
So just thought I'd throw that in there.
Yeah.
No, I think you're right. Like how people might react differently and take, there definitely might be, a kind of different aspects of the videotape. Do you know what I mean? So I never even thought of that, mate. You know what I mean? It's interesting you brought that up, because I never thought about the fact that, it could be a reflection of, what happened in the previous life to now.
Yeah, I wonder. There's probably a good chance it is, because it'd be quite a coincidence otherwise, I think. So we're going to get on to the kind of 7 days now. So Rachel obviously found out that Katie had been away at the Shelter Mountain Inn, and she searches this out. And this is like a really kind of secluded cabin, like perfect setting. It'd been the perfect setting of its own for like a horror film, like kind of secluded woods, that kind of thing. So Rachel's kind of checking in, and she's asking questions of the person who owns the inn, and she finds the videotape, and she kind of sneaks it into her bag. She decides to stay at the Mountain Inn, and she watches the video. And just like was alluded to earlier, she gets the phone call directly afterwards, just saying 7 days. It's not even you're going to die in 7 days. It's just kind of 7 days. So I thought it would be worth having a wee chat just about the tape itself, because there's quite a lot to unpack there. What did you think of the actual contents of the tape, and how that kind of rippled out throughout the film?
Well, just before you went to that, mate, or I'll speak about that. See about the guy he's introduced to the cabin, all that sort of thing. You have a conversation with him. Obviously, he brings the card out, the playing card number 7. So again, that's another 7 days. It's kind of a wee kind of a link into that as well. Don't know if you managed to catch that. The 7 clubs or spades, it was, whatever it was.
Okay. He was a bit of a failed magician.
So he brought that out, and she just said, "I was at your card." She's like, "Aye," laughing. But that number 7 is obviously important. Regarding the videotape, mate, it was looking at it. And we obviously see, as viewers throughout the film, we see it a number of times because we are looking through the eyes of Rachel at the time to try and get answers. But for the first time you're watching it, you're going, "What is going on here?" And the nature of how jumpy it is, it cuts from scene to scene. There's mirrors. There's, it's like I think it's the, is it Anna Morgan, the mother?
Yeah.
So she looks dead, like she's looking right at you. You get the well, the shutting of it as well. I think it's very unsettling, to be honest with you. Just the nature of how jumpy it is, and it cuts from kind of different settings. So if I was to watch that, and I think just watching it anyway, you're like, what is going on here? Like, but it is unsettling to the fact that you go, if it didn't scare you, then what are you thinking about then? Because it's obviously there to unsettle you. Why the video was made in the first place. It's there to unsettle you. Even like the fly on the screen as well. Well, the fly in the video, I'll say just now. And then there's a crows as well, I'm sure. Like there's a number of different creatures in there that I don't say I didn't like it. It was unsettling. Do you know what I mean? But I thought it was very good for the film. But what did you think it?
Yeah, same. There's a lot to take in, and it's quite good that the film does break down the contents of it and the meaning behind the different parts. So by the end of the film, you've got a pretty decent view of most of the video, although there's still a few bits that are probably unsure. I've got a few fun facts about the tape, just from doing a wee bit of reading beforehand. They made some copies of the VHS, so you could actually watch that couple-minute video. And apparently I think it was Canada, maybe, and they left copies of it in the cinema on chairs for people to take away, which I thought was quite clever. And the other thing is, and I'd be quite interested to buy this actually. The DVD has a special feature apparently where you click something and it shows the video and it doesn't let you escape until it's done, and then like a phone rings like thereafter. So there's that as well. And the last thing which I thought was really interesting was they made like an artificial, you know, the red tree or the tree with the red leaves
Yes.
in the video. There was they created the tree, and it was a particular type of tree, but the fruit for that type of tree was called Samara. So Samara Morgan's name comes from the fruit of the specific tree that's in the video, which I thought was quite interesting.
Very good. I like your fun facts, mate. Keep them coming.
I've just got IMDb to thank. I just like to do a wee bit of research. So moving on to day 2. So Rachel starts experiencing unsettling things, such as seeing like kind of images of the tape in her daily life, and she also has a nosebleed as well. And then she's starting to, from being a bit kind of blasé about it, she's starting to become a bit worried, and she starts doing a bit more research into it, and she also finds out that like about the kind of the facial expressions that people have when they die as well. So it's quite interesting seeing her go from kind of not believe. It's similar to like when we're talking about what was the last thing we did? Well, I suppose it was Hocus Pocus as well. The character at the start of the film not believing in these things, but kind of as they kind of progress through it, they start to believe in it more.
Aye, they're experiencing it. Do you know what I mean? So when you experience things, your mind starts to kind of, go from what's, non-believers to believers, what's reality and things.
Yeah.
So it's kind of what's happened to Rachel now.
Mm-hmm. And they obviously, there's a lot of, like, they find obviously like photo albums and like drawings, and the face is always kind of blacked out.
Aye, it's distorted, isn't it? The face is all distorted.
But it also kind of looks a bit like the Samara, doesn't it? With the hair covering her face.
Aye.
So it could be kind of symbolic of that as well.
They're kind of leaving the mark, like Samara, kind of leaving their mark when they watch the video, and they're leaving the mark type of thing. So
yeah,
that's what they're going to end up, looking like.
Yeah. So on day 3, Rachel starts to realize through taking photographs of herself that her face is starting to distort in the pictures as well. And then she's obviously a wee bit dubious about it at first. Like, is it something wrong with like the camera, or is it something kind of more sinister? But she's obviously starting to get a bit more worried. So she tries to speak to some of the other people who have watched the film as well. So I think this is the part where she seeks out the girl that's in the mental institution.
Aye, Becca.
Yeah, and she's not for talking.
Certainly not. No.
She's obviously been just kind of scared out her wits by what happened, and they're not really going to get a lot from her.
No, I don't. And I think when she was just chatting to her and they were getting nothing back from her. I mean, she was obviously traumatised and whatever have you. But I think when the moment she starts to mention the video, that's when you start to get kind of a different reaction for her.
Yeah. Is it her that says like she doesn't sleep, or she says something about her, does she not?
I think there's quite a few of them that say that. I think they all kind of as she visits different people, they always say that she never sleeps. That's like a theme through it. Do you know what I mean? It's like it doesn't matter she's going to get you.
She's going to get you. I think it's just obviously we're kind of going through this on the kind of day by day. It's quite a good tool, isn't it, for building tension? How we're literally counting down to the time when Rachel's probably going to die.
I do like it. There's a few kind of films like this. They kind of do the countdown of like what's happening during this day, and then ultimately there's got to be a kind of crescendo to a degree. Do they survive? Do they not survive? How are they going to get to it? I mean, I can't remember off the top of my head now what other films do it. I'm sure like A Quiet Place does it. I could be wrong there.
Yeah.
Because have you seen The Quiet Place?
I think I might have years ago. It rings a bell.
Aye.
But not in recent history anyway.
No, I can't mind if they, but there's certainly other films. I can't remember what I now, but I do like this kind of building tension.
Yeah.
What happens this day, then ultimately coming to an end to some degree.
I think it does make the film stand out, and I think it keeps you kind of engrossed as you're going through. So moving on to day 4. So we talked about the relationship between Aidan and Rachel earlier, and he seemed awfully young to just be, I don't know, maybe he's a bit older than he looks, maybe just different parenting styles, but he seems quite young to just get up and go out the door. He's just getting up and he's like, I'm off to school. Seems quite independent, and at the funeral scene he's obviously got himself dressed in his suit and his lady's mum's dress out, so there's that kind of continued theme of him being quite independent and then being quite kind of separated. So Aidan's walking to school and he walks past a man and they kind of look at each other, and then the same man, who is Noah, obviously goes to Rachel's house. And when we first met Noah, despite that wee scene with Aidan, I thought he was just like a friend of Rachel, or maybe like a former boyfriend. You obviously find out later that he's Aidan's dad. What was your take on that kind of first? Did you think he would be Aidan's dad right away, or did you think he was just somebody that Rachel knew?
I just thought it was somebody Rachel knew, in be honest with you. I think it was
a friend or
just a pal, maybe like a investigator pal, whatever. I mean, I don't think it was Aidan's father, or maybe he's or Rachel's ex-partner or whatever. I mean, I just didn't put that together. I mean, I think it did it quite well. It was kind of, all right, I'm just here as just yelling in a year on some sort of investigation, but then their relationship, their dynamics kind of unravel as well.
Yeah, he's quite an important character. So obviously that scene where him and Aidan look at each other was obviously the hint that there was a connection there between the two. But there's a wee bit of tension between Noah and Rachel. So there's obviously they hint that there's been a relationship in the past, and there's been a breakdown. But he's also a bit of an expert when it comes to technology. So she's seeking him out to have a look at the photographs to see. To see if he can work out what's causing this to happen. However, as part of that, Noah ends up watching the tape himself and also becomes cursed. And they begin to work together to try and work out what's happening, which leads them to the Morgan family.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair to Rachel, she was a wee bit reluctant to actually show them the video, because she was starting to believe the fact that by watching it, you're cursed, and in order for him to investigate it, he had to watch it. I mean, that was kind of what does he have to? What you're investigating in? If you don't let me watch it, I need to know the full details. So he watches the video. He says he wasn't really scared at all at it. Do you know what I mean? But the phone rings thereafter, as it always does when you watch the film, or the tape, I should say. But am I right in saying that they just ignore it? Did they just ignore it?
They know.
Or there was some sort of cutscene.
There was lots of different bits, and I'm quite glad they did it that way, because it'd have been a bit boring if everyone had answered the phone and it said 7 days, because sometimes they ignored it, sometimes they deleted the message, and things like that. So I can't remember specifically for that one, but
Aye.
yeah,
I'm just
he
thinking
he
maybe,
doesn't seem that bothered.
nah, didn't he? He wasn't scared at all at it. Do you know what I mean? So maybe he's just ignoring the message. You know, maybe the
Yeah.
cuss is picking the phone up and then hearing it. You know, I don't know. But
Yeah.
so he goes investigates it. You know, they're getting through the still images, the video, because he is good with, you know, tech in terms of that regard. And then they're kind of having a wee kind of bickering session about, you know, what's there in there, and you know, Rachel just tries to take over, even though he's the expert. I wasn't really sure about that scene, to be honest with you. I thought maybe just let him do his job. You know,
Do you think it's quite
understand.
convenient that Do you think it's quite convenient that the main protagonist for this film is an investigative journalist?
I do. What's your thoughts on that?
It's obviously by design, but it does help the film move along, I suppose, that she's got the skills and like experience in researching these things. So
Aye.
they obviously managed to track. They're looking at obviously old like newspapers and reports and like mysterious deaths, and looking at maybe some of the locations in the video. I think they managed to track the lighthouse down, which is apparently still a working lighthouse in
The use
America.
of a lighthouse is always good in these types of films because it's got symbolism as well. Do you know what I mean? So, you know, I think I referenced it in the Shutter Island review did about a year ago.
Yeah.
The references, you know, the significance and symbolism of the lighthouse. So I do like it.
Yeah, and they see Anna in a photograph. I think that's like a photo of like the kind of community, and Anna's in the photo. So that leads us on to day 5. So we're progressing quite nicely. So Rachel and Noah's search leads them to Moesco Island, where they learn more about the Morgan family and their troubled daughter, Samara, named after the fruit. So Rachel interviews Richard Morgan, who's defensive and invasive about Samara. So that was an interesting scene. So they obviously find out that Richard Morgan and Anna Morgan had a few kind of failed pregnancies.
Yes.
And they lost some children, and they kept trying, and they eventually succeeded, which I'm not sure if they fully allude to this in the film, because obviously you find out later on that the spoilers, I suppose, that Anna was the one that kind of threw her down the well. I'm trying to remember, see if you can recall as well, the reason why they want to kill Samara. Is it because she was displaying quite a lot? It was because she was displaying quite a lot of troubling behaviors towards like the horses and things like that, I assume.
Aye, so what was it? I think she was like, it's like she was showing these types of, you know, was it all kind of paranormal tendencies, but they referenced the fact that, you know, the stables and all the rest of it, you know, the horses, you know, were annoying, not annoying her, but, you know, they were troubling her.
No.
And I think she was just showing the kind of a dark. She was showing a kind of dark side, and it just kind of led to Richard saying, "Do you know what I mean? It was She was never meant to get pregnant. She was never meant to have, you know, a kid."
Yeah.
And that way, where like there was a reason for it. Do you know what I mean? So I think she was just kind of showing, you know, supernatural occurrences, it was haunting the family and all that sort of thing, and obviously the farm. There was kind of psychic abilities as well. So I don't know, man. So that was my take for it anyway, and they just couldn't handle it anymore. They didn't know how to explain it, so they felt they were cursed, and the only way they could end that curse, or so they thought, would to kill her, unfortunately.
There was something that I forgot to mention on day one, which is really important, is that Rachel makes a copy of the tape. So that will obviously become important later in the film. Yeah, it's just like for anyone who's ever been in that position, which lots of people unfortunately would have been if you're struggling to conceive a child, it's quite a very horrific act to obviously throw her down the well. So, but obviously that was just those characters' beliefs about what should have happened, what did happen, and some of the behavior she was displaying. So we find out. So obviously Richard's been a bit kind of evasive and not wanting to tell the truth. So moving on to day 6, Rachel discovers more about Samara's past, and she finds the barn where she was kept. So they were actually keeping her in with the horses, which maybe explains why the horses were annoying her so much and why certain things went down. Richard Morgan in this kind of segment takes his own life, further cementing the curse. And Rachel and Noah find a videotape of Samara and a psychiatric interview revealing her powers. So also in this segment, we can go back on these. Rachel works out that the Samara was thrown into the well, and they're looking for a way to try and kind of break the curse. So there's quite a lot in there. Obviously, I was doing this kind of day by day, so I think I just want to rewind slightly because there's a scene in between probably day 5 and 6, which is maybe, well, I don't know what to use the word memorable. It was very disturbing and very hard to watch. So there were quite a few hard to watch scenes in this film. I'm talking about the scene on the boat with the horses.
Remind me again?
Remember when Rachel's going up to the... She's going up to the... There's like a...
Oh, I know, I do. Aye, sorry. Aye.
What do you call those things that carry horses? What's the name for those things they carry horses in? Like when they're traveling?
I don't know what you call them. Can't
Well,
remember.
anyway, she goes up to talk to the horse.
Aye.
And like right away, you can tell that the horse is uncomfortable, and it's obviously because Rachel has the curse, and the curse kind of came about because of a lot of the treatment of the horses in the past by Samara, and then the horses escape, and one of them ends up kind of doing what Anna did in the movie, jumping off the boat, and then they all kind of run to the other side, and they see that the horse is being killed by kind of going underneath the boat, and you see all the blood in the water. So for me, that was one of the more hard to watch scenes in the movie, and I'm sure a lot of animal lovers also would feel similar, or not just necessarily people who absolutely love animals, but just anyone I think would find that scene quite hard to watch.
I think about that scene, mate, in particular, is because you don't see a lot of blood in the film at all, you know, and then when things like that happen, I mean, it's not the typical horror film. Like you would like slasher, blood here, blood there, blood everywhere. Do you know what I mean? It's a different type of death, which again would throw it off. But it shows you how unsettled the horses were. They were, they wanted away because, like you said, Rachel had the curse, and they had previous experiences of that. So, I mean, it is a hard to watch scene. I totally forgot for a second there. Do you know what I mean? When she went to the barn,
I'm struggling. Obviously, I've only watched this once the full way through, so I'm trying to remember where that scene falls. Is that when they're traveling to the island, or is it when they're traveling back from the island? It's obviously one of the two ways because they're on the boat.
Traveling to the island, isn't it?
Yeah. So obviously that happening even before you meet Richard is obviously quite tough as well. So another tough scene was that because people are probing around about Samara's death, obviously that Richard Morgan is finding this difficult through guilt and like grief, I suppose, as well. And I've never seen, I must admit, I've never seen a scene like just like this in a movie before, where he goes into basically electrocutes himself in the bathtub. So that was another tough scene.
To be honest with you, I don't think he needed all that equipment. I think it would have been done a lot simpler than that. But I suppose what it does kind of say is that, you know, the extreme measures he would take to get away from it. So you can through guilt. Even he says as well that she never sleeps. So either you know Rachel bringing up this the past for him, it brings up his guilt. She'll find out the truth and all that sort of thing. And then the only way he can escape it is by doing that again. You know, another death that's a little bit different to what we've seen before and what we've read in the papers and things. You know what I mean? So, I just thought maybe, you know, a toast on the bath would have sufficed, but the extreme measures of electrocuting himself with all the equipment and that, it was. You don't see it happening per se. You don't really see it. You just, you know, it looks round to Rachel, and you see the electrical, you know, him getting electrocuted happening, and she runs out the bathroom, and that's when Noah's there to console her. And then you do see him after he's dead, through Noah's point of view. But
it's interesting. It's interesting you're talking about the deaths and like the blood and things like that, because when I was reading the IMDb stuff, it was saying that they had to tone quite a lot of the stuff down to get I think it was a PG-13 rating, because it was originally going to be an R-rated film for like the original script. So there was some rewrites for it as well.
So it's now PG-13, did you say?
When it came out, yeah.
Right. I mean, I think it. We always kind
of. I don't know if I would let 13-year-old watch this.
No, we always talk about less is more, don't we, on podcasts? And I think it was, you know, I don't know, like Saw or something. Do you know what I mean? There's blood and guts everywhere. I don't know. You know, this is more of a psychological horror. Do you know what I mean? It wasn't really required, but not to say that we didn't need it at all. I think it was good to see different aspects of it, but just no over the top, different deaths reflected on it. So I actually quite liked the way it was done, mate.
Yeah. Cool. And yeah, so finally on to day 7, and this is another tough scene. So I feel like as the film kind of goes on, a lot of the scenes become quite tough. So Rachel and Noah find the well beneath the floorboards of the cabin where the tape was first watched. Rachel falls into the well and discovers Samara's remains. She experiences a vision of Samara's tragic death and believes that giving her a proper burial will lift the curse. So I think, there's also more to the end of the film, but I just think starting with that point, so that this is kind of where you find out, or where you see the well. It's quite interesting because you always see that kind of symbol of the ring, don't you? And it makes you think of something like Lord of the Rings. But I thought it was really clever that it's really just the well and then like the light coming in from outside. I thought that was a really interesting twist, that's what the symbol was all about. Samara's view from the bottom of the well.
Yep. The well, the cover getting moved over as well to hide her and things. And we kind of find out the truth there, don't we? Because obviously what happens there is that, you know, she obviously falls down the well, and as she's down there, you kind of see Samara's kind of journey to that point in which she was through. Interestingly enough, though, see when we went, you know, because as Rachel fell down the well, you kind of seen obviously Rachel's body. You kind of and you get through that, but no, do you know what else was there though? Do you know what else I seen? If you look very closely, you can see what's the script.
This is distasteful.
So we
You
can see
actually
what
stole my
script
bit
podcast.
because I was going to say it at the end. There was lots of other videotapes, and if you looked really closely, one of them was a what's the script special.
Well, I'll tell you what we want to do right from here on in, right? So, see when you're hosting, I get to say it.
Aye.
When I'm hosting, you get to throw it in, right?
Okay, I'll forget
Anyway,
about that.
you can check out What's a Script podcast on Spotify and all that sort of stuff. Anyway, back to our podcast. So she finds Samara's body. You kind of get her point of view for what happened. So we already know at this point that Anna, or did we know? I can't remember. Anyway, we find out that Anna killed Samara, and by putting a plastic bag around her head and throwing her down the well. But where I think Anna thinks that she has suffocated through the plastic bag, she threw her down the well. You would think that would be enough to kill her, but it wasn't. So in actual fact, she was alive down in the well for 7 days, which is where the 7 days comes from. And because of, all that, that's where the curse comes from. So as we find out about that, we kind of see as well that, all the kind of imprints on Rachel's body are there. So Rachel thinks by finding the truth, by exposing all this sort of stuff, that the curse is lifted. But in actual fact, it's not.
There's a wee bit of a similarity to what we were discussing with Hocus Pocus last week, because it's another one where see if you hadn't seen The Ring before, you think that Rachel's solved it, the curse is going to be lifted, everybody's going to live, it's going to be a happy ending. But then if you're a regular movie watcher, you realise there's still about 20 to 30 minutes left, just like there was in Hocus Pocus. So yeah, it's interesting how you get that happy resolution, and then obviously there's more to come.
I know, but we're not sitting through, say in a cinema, you're not going to sit through cinema and think when it's going to end.
I know.
Do you know what I mean?
I'm just looking at it from a streaming perspective when you know how much time's left. Do you know what I mean?
So we think that Rachel's done it. She's managed to lift the curse, whatever have you, and then that's her saved, and no one's going to be tormented. But it's not the case. So
just before we go on to Noah's bit, there was obviously we talked about the roof of the well and the fact it's ring shaped, as in it's circular. But I can't remember if it was the director or the writer. They said the idea of the film being called The Ring, although that's like a translation of what the Japanese one was, is that it's like a circular nature of the curse getting passed on. So that's kind of what the circle was to represent. The other thing was when she finds Samara's body and she's holding it, but then it transitions and suddenly she's just holding like the skeleton. I thought that bit was quite chilling as well.
It was good the way they done it. It's like it was like skin.
Yeah,
you can see her clearly. You can see she's got a connection. She's understood, and everything's coming to fruition of how she's managed to get to that point. And then reality comes back, and then she's just now skeleton, just bones. So it was good how they done that, but it was kind of unsettling. She's just holding a skeletal, body. So like down in that well in darkness and in the muddy water and that. I mean, it's no ideal.
It's also, what was the other film that we watched? Remember Disturbia? There was a basement in that as well, and it was full of bodies.
That's right.
Kind of reminded me of that a bit.
That's right. It was, and there was an American Psycho, a closet full of bodies.
The bodies are piling up on Seismic Cinema. So Rachel feels a sense of peace, thinking the nightmare is over. However, there's still the loose end of Noah being infected by the curse, and he is attacked and killed by Samara, who, although obviously we didn't really touch on this, but obviously the parts of the video start to come into the real world, like the flies are kind of coming through the screen. But this time Samara herself emerges through the television, which was a classic image. I know that image. Like, I've seen that and like parodied or referenced in various things. And yeah, so she races over, and Noah's like backs to her in the chair, and she turns around, and he's got the exact same look in his face as Katie as well. And this is where Rachel realizes that copying the tape is the only way to survive. So she does this for her son as well, who had earlier in the film, he'd watched the tape as well.
I think so. I meant to mention this, but that fly coming out the screen was a foreshadow of the actual end part of Noah's death. Because where we don't see it happen to Katie, I can only imagine that's what happened because the TV switched on, and and you can only imagine that's what happened. We don't see it because that's the reveal at the end.
But Katie had a TV in her room, did she not?
That's what I'm saying. So the TV switched on, and
yeah.
and then it just so happened that how she died. But we don't see that because that's why would show that at the start of the film. Same happened to Noah, but this scene is the walking away, watching this film and going, "Oh, the most iconic scene is the Samara coming out the well, walking towards the TV, or towards Noah rather, and then killing the TV." But it's the nature of how it's done. It's that kind of jump, kind of moving. It's all distorted as well, seen through his vision. So for one moment, she's just kind of crawling through the TV, and then the next moment, she's right in his face in a split second. And that's where he flies back and all that, and you don't really see what happens after that until again the kind of transition between the different people of that kind of frozen, as you called it, ring face. Do you know what I mean? So I think that's the most iconic bit, I think, of the whole film. Because when do you ever see somebody crawling at a TV? You know what I mean? So
that's obviously a bit I'd seen before in other things. Like I'm familiar with it without seeing it.
The dating, for me, like Scary Movie and all that sort of thing.
To me, it's the horse scene's the one I think will stick in my mind the most.
Aye.
Yeah, that was.
It's the one.
Just how scared they were was really tough to watch.
But obviously, you were saying there as well that she runs towards Noah's house. He's no escape the curse, and then coming back to her son in her house. It's like, and he's telling her as well to say, "You much never sleeps. Don't you understand it yet?" And then suddenly it clocks the fact, okay, you've got to make a copy of it. So
that's all basically.
But she sees the marks on his arms as well and all that kind of imprints. So she's like, right, okay. And she gets him to grab a tape. He has to press the button. So there's that dilemma of saving your son and then risking other people. So what we, I think I already know the answer to this question if I ask you. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, aye.
So yeah, it's definitely. I think this would definitely go into the rewatchable pile. I think there's probably we've covered a lot in the hour that we've done, but there's probably so much more that we could have dove into with this one.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think we should do the Ring sequel. No, not the sequel. Sorry, the original.
Yeah, if we can try and find that, yeah. So we're at that time of the episode. We've survived, James. We've copied the videotape. We're passing it on in the form of a podcast, and we've survived the 7 days.
I knew we could do it, mate. 100%. We've got faith in you.
So shame about Paul.
Listen, we can't all survive it.
Anyway, but it's a script. We've passed the tape in your direction, so. It's really good. So this is the time where we talk about our seismic stars, or should it be seismic circles? No, we'll go with stars. So this is where we give the score a score out of 10, 1 being the worst, 10 being the best, and it's just we're just rating this film in its own merits. We're not comparing it to every horror film or any other films we've reviewed. Just this on its own merits. And I've got a score written down, but I'll probably have a different score by the time I speak. So James, do you want to go first?
Aye. I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10. 7 out of 10.
Okay.
It's not the best psychological horror film I've seen. There's definitely some, memorable parts in it. I did enjoy it, obviously. 7 out of 10 is a good score. But I just, I don't know if I was expecting better. Granted, it's only the second time I've seen it. Do you know what I mean? So, I mean, if I was to maybe watch Ring 2, I don't know if it's a third one or whatever, but I might be, kind of more fondly towards it. But in terms of what I was expecting and what I'm maybe used to, I'm just going to give it a 7 out of 10.
It's quite low on the James scale, actually.
I've given too many films at 8, 9, 10. So, nah, seriously, though, I think 7, it's fine.
This was obviously my first time watching it, although I had obviously a decent amount of knowledge about the kind of general premise of the film. I've given it an 8. I do think it's got. I think the way it's designed with the kind of 7 days is quite refreshing and different. There's a lot of really tough scenes, but obviously that kind of makes them memorable in that sense. And I think there's a lot to unpack. We like complex films here in Seismic Cinema. It makes it a lot easier to dissect. So I'll stick with 8. Where it could have been improved, there was a part of the film, I think, when they were doing like the investigating side of things, it maybe slowed down a wee bit, just maybe like in the middle, but not for too long. There wasn't really anything. I don't think there was really anything major I didn't like about it. I thought the performances were solid. I liked the storyline. I really did enjoy it. It's one I'll definitely revisit, and it's definitely one I think I'll whip out on Halloween for a wee spooky evening.
No, I think it's a good shout, mate. Do you know what I mean? It's like one I've not seen for a while, obviously, since 2002 when it came out. So, I think if I had watched this every Halloween, like I do with most, like, I like my kind of favourite films, then I'd have maybe a wee bit more and, essay level kind of feedback and things. But again, second viewing, I think 7 out of 10 is a good score, mate. Do you know what I mean? I just, I think I'm going to watch it again, like yourself.
So if this one reaches 300 views, we'll do the original.
We can do that, aye. 300 views on YouTube.
Right, so just pulling to a close here. So just a reminder, you can find Seismic Cinema on various social media platforms. So please consider liking and sharing. That'd be much appreciated. You can also watch or listen on mainly YouTube, Spotify, but also Apple Podcasts, Audible, and Amazon Music. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider giving us a like and subscribing to the page. And make sure you check out the Podpack Collective and all of our podcasting friends. Right.
7 days.
Before we do our outro, yes, 7 days, I would like to see, and I always look forward to this. I like the way we're doing it, where we don't actually find out until we're live. James, have you chosen something for the next review?
Well, are we still going down the kind of horror Halloween themes? So we're not really sure.
See, for me, from now until the 1st of December, I think horror type films are fine. I think when we hit the 1st of December, that's when we get the Christmas hats on and the elf costumes.
Right, okay, fair dues. So I've got one.
Well, it's really up to you. You could choose whatever time of the year you want to choose.
No, I've got one. I'm just hoping you can get it.
Well, we'll see.
I'm going to get a list of 3 films then if you can't get them, right? So I'm going to go with Insidious.
Okay, I watched all 4 of them quite recently, so yeah, I can do that.
Okay.
They're on Now TV.
So you got Insidious then?
I can do Insidious, yeah. It was actually one we almost did. We almost did it back when we did a horror themed one. Yeah, I can do it. The first one, yeah.
Yes, the first one.
Yeah, I've watched all 4 relatively recently, so that's not. What were the other options? Just out of interest.
All right, okay. Conjuring.
I think I've maybe seen that, but years ago.
And the other one is Sinister.
Sinister. Don't know if I've seen that, but I'm happy to do Insidious.
Well, Insidious it is then.
Okay. Right.
Excited?
Well, just to wrap up, yes, very excited. As long as we're still here after 7 days.
Well, we've survived it.
Well, there could be a sequel. Right. So I'm Colin, I hadn't seen this, but I now have. Paul, our editor-in-chief, unfortunately watched a videotape. Actually, well, Paul actually, he watched the sequel to this, and then watched the tape, and now he's not here. And James?
And I'm James, and I have probably written an essay on it.
Although you didn't actually do it for this one.
I didn't.
Slacking.
Indeed.
7 days.